Welcome to Passages Pulse, where we track the heartbeat of Israel and the Middle East from a Christian perspective. In a time of confusion, division, and misinformation, we're here to help you cut through the noise with truth, clarity, and conviction. Hi, welcome to the Passages Pulse. This is a special episode we're recording on Monday, June 2nd, around 2 p.m. Eastern Time. My name is Sebastian. I'm here with my co host Josiah, and we're here doing this special episode because of a terrific tragedy that took place yesterday in Boulder, Colorado. And we wanted to talk to you about it because I know you're thinking about it as well. Josiah, hello. Thank you for being with us today. Tell us about what happened yesterday.
Yeah, well, shortly after the Washington, D.C. shooting attack that killed Yaron and Sarah, which we told you a bit about in the last couple episodes, there was another attack yesterday that happened in Boulder, Colorado, that Sebastian just referenced. And this one was similar, but obviously very tragic as well. And we wanted to give you a brief update on what this actually entailed, what actually happened. So, if you're not familiar with the events, a basic rundown. Yesterday, there was a demonstration or protest, and it was run by a group called Run for Their Lives. They've been gathering in Boulder, Colorado, consistently having these demonstrations or protests, which are meant to show support and solidarity for the hostages in the Gaza Strip that were taken captive by Hamas. It's an organization that's been around for a little while and been having these protests, so people knew about them. Unfortunately, someone was able to take advantage of that and planned for some time and then carried out yesterday a terror attack against these demonstrators. A man by the name of Mohammed Salman, who it appears is of Egyptian nationality, approached this group and using a combination of either what's being referred to as a homemade flamethrower or Molotov cocktails began to essentially light people on fire. It was a just horribly gruesome attack. And he did so in an effort to disrupt the protest and make a statement about the war in Gaza. At the time that we're recording, it's not entirely clear whether anyone died from their injuries. It is clear that there are at least 8 people who were seriously injured as a result of the burns that they suffered. The victims range from the age of 52 to 88, the oldest of which, an 88-year-old woman, was actually a Holocaust survivor, which is
Wow.
just another tragic layer to the story that a woman who survives the Holocaust then finds herself being torched on the streets of the United States many decades later. It's just really horrific the way that history, unfortunately for this poor woman, seems to have repeated itself.
Well, that sounds super terrifying. And first of all, we ask our community to pray. You know, a lot of people say this, politicians say thoughts and prayers, but here we are. We are passages people. We are Christians, and we ask our alumni, please pray. Please pray for the people. Please for the families, for the community. Pray for our country. This is a really terrifying thing that somebody can be just caught in fire, protest while demonstrating to free the captives. So, Josiah, a lot of people will try to categorize this in different ways.
Yeah.
Help us think through this. How do we know? Is this a terror attack? Is this an anti-Semitic terror attack? How should we think about it?
Yes, it's an important question, and one of the reasons why we're recording this episode out of our usual schedule is because what you're going to see over the next 24 hours is a lot of debate over this. What was the motive? Why would someone do this? Is this a terror attack, or is this just something that happens? A clinically insane person carrying out some sort of attack that doesn't make any sense. And it's important, I think, to stay focused on the truth of the matter, and that is that this was an anti Semitic terror attack. So we want to share that with you, and then also share a few reasons why we believe that this is the case. So, a few important details that have come out, even in the initial reports that the FBI is giving to the press, affidavits that are being filed in court as they begin to lay out what might be the charges against him. I'm not sure that they have officially published a full list of charges, but what they have shared is some details of the investigation. Some of those important details to note. One, this was planned far in advance. This isn't something he just decided on a whim to do. It was something that he claimed to have been studying and planning to do for up to a year. The second thing that's
Wow.
important to note, yes, wow, exactly. The second thing that's important to note is that this was something that he deliberately and intentionally carried out, not as a random act, but with a specific target in mind. So he told the investigators that he specifically targeted the group that was protesting. Not just that he had been planning to carry out some sort of act of violence like this, but that he specifically chose a group who was protesting in support of the hostages in Gaza as his target for this event. Now, if you take those two factors into consideration and then think about the fact that what he did was attack a group of unarmed civilians, none of these people are combatants. It's eerily reminiscent in some ways of what Hamas did on October 7. They were attacking Holocaust survivors, elderly people who in no way represent any sort of physical threat to him. But he chooses them as his target for a reason, because they're soft targets, because they're civilians, because they will allow him to make a very loud political statement. And the political statement that he chose to make was some variation of, I want all Zionists to die. I want to kill them all, or I want them all to die. I don't want any of them to live any longer. And he also said some various refrains that you would have heard in the attack in Washington, D.C. recently, like free Palestine or things like that. So clearly, there is some political nature to what he's trying to do. He's trying to make a political statement. It's rational. He's thought it out. He's thought about this for a very long time. It's deliberate. It's intentional. What this all adds up to is it's an act of terrorism that is specifically targeting a Jewish institution or a group of people who are protesting in support of the Jewish people. Therefore, it's an act of anti-Semitism. And I think it's important that we confront that reality that this is almost exactly what happened in Washington, D.C. 2 weeks ago. It's an act of anti-Semitism. It's an act of terrorism. It's not a random act of some sort of insane person. It's someone who knows what they're doing and is willingly and intentionally committing an act of serious evil.
Yeah, Josiah, what I'm left thinking about this tragedy that just took place yesterday, Sunday, is the I had an opportunity to meet with the ambassador of Israel on Friday on behalf of Passages. We were invited to a meeting. He happened to be visiting the city of Atlanta, previously scheduled visit, and we presented him with a plaque to commemorate the names and the lives of Sarah and Yaron, whose Shiva, the mourning period for them just ended last week, and then few days later, this happens again. It's really scary to see this happening, and of course, we need to be praying about this. So let me ask you about that. How do you think we should be praying about this? And I also have some thoughts inviting our people to pray and to act, so we can try to stop this type of thing from happening again.
Well, I think, Sebastian, that the first thing that comes to mind is what you already shared we should be praying for, which is for the victims and their families. They're very serious injuries. So, of course, we need to be praying for their well being, for their recovery, for their comfort, and for the families who are going to need support as well, and need to take care of their loved ones who suffered this attack. I think we also should be praying for the truth to prevail in this instance, for justice to be served, for the investigation to be very thorough, and for it to prove exactly what happened and why this person did it, and for the truth to be made very plain throughout the course of the investigation and prosecution of the charges for this attack. I think we also should be praying for the release of the hostages. And let's not forget that just like Yaron and Sarah were killed coming out of an event where they were trying to discuss very noble ideas like humanitarian aid in Gaza, the people who were attacked at this event were doing something very noble and admirable, honorable, which was trying to demonstrate and protest for the release of hostages in Hamas captivity. So I think we should be praying for that as well, that those hostages are released and that their efforts are not, I don't want to say wasted, but that their efforts are honored, that God would honor the sacrifices they've made showing up to that protest but that their efforts are
Yeah.
things that stand out to me, Sebastian, and I would be, of course, very curious to know what you might add to that.
Yeah, first of all, I wanted to say thank you to the authorities in Colorado. It seems like the authority does have had a lot of moral clarity. The governor has been saying the right things. The FBI was on site as they're classifying this as an act of terrorism, and this person is going to be persecuted this way. So, um, glad to see that at least the response to this crime is the correct one, and our response as Christians is to pray. I'm thinking about one thing, Josiah. I wanted to see if we can maybe. This will be a short episode, so we'll probably just have a few more minutes. But I'm concerned about the dehumanization of what is Zionist. But that's code for Jewish people.
Yeah.
Yeah, Yaron and Sarah were targeted because this guy knew that this is a Jewish event at the Jewish Museum, and he went there to try to kill Jewish people. And I don't know if you saw this, but the day after, in Germany, some pictures of Yaron showed up with a red triangle next to his face saying Zionists are not safe. So you know what they mean. So during the Holocaust, what we saw happening is a escalating dehumanization of the Jewish people. They started first,
Hmm.
with Kristallnacht, taking away their property, taking away their passports, not permitting them to travel, and eventually it was like the final solution, right? They just need to end. We need to end the Jewish people. So once you convince somebody that these people are not humans, then you can destroy them. And I'm really concerned that this is a pattern that at the very very early stages we're starting to see in this country and around the world, that Zionists are not people, so they deserve to die. Any thoughts about that, Josiah? I'm really concerned about this aspect of anti-Semitism when it comes to dehumanization of people who believe that the Jewish people have a right to live in their homeland.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And that's part of why it's so concerning that he was planning this for as long as he was, because it means that he had time to rationalize or to self justify his actions. And he still reached the conclusion that this was the right thing to do. So that's a major concern. It's also concern to your point that this is now the second attack in which very similar language was used, in which the attackers don't apologize. They willingly tell the investigators without having to. It doesn't seem like they had to push very hard or force the answers out of them.
Good
They
point.
confessed, they
Yeah.
took credit, and they justified their actions by saying things like, free Palestine or all Zionists have to die. So for people to not just be carrying out these attacks now, right after the other, but to be proud of that fact and publicly taking credit for these attacks, it's a concern. It needs to be a concern, I think, that it's not just the violence increasing, it's the degree to which they think they will find any sort of social acceptance or support for their actions that should be very concerning.
Yeah, and I'm also thinking about something that another arson attack that took place at the governor of Pennsylvania's home, right? Governor Shapiro's
Hmm.
house. They were celebrating a Jewish
Yeah.
holiday. I think it was in the middle of the night, and there was an arson attack that the intent there was to burn them alive. Thank God they were safe and they were able to escape. But that was another anti-Semitic attack, also arson, also trying to just burn people alive. This is a terrifying trend. And also, we ask again, like we did with the other killer in DC, what did you accomplish? You know, what have you accomplished for the people of Gaza? What have you? These people were asking for the liberation of innocent civilians. They were not asking for anything else. But what did you accomplish for your cause? And the one other thing that I'm thinking as an immigrant here is that when I came to this country, my parents and everybody were so careful. Like, you just really need to be careful, like, value that you're in this country because any little thing, not any little thing, but crimes can get you kicked out. And this guy apparently came here on a visa. He overstayed it. Then he he's here unlawfully, but somehow through some program he got a work permit. But this person doesn't value being here at all. He just wanted to risk being in this country or getting kicked out of this country by committing a crime. Like, it just shows the level of hate, where the heart can go when you start going down this path. Josiah, what do you think about that? Like, this guy didn't even care about being discovered.
Yeah. I mean, again, to the point that he was so bold, that the shooter in DC was so bold, and didn't feel it necessary to hide, but actually thought it more effective to be out in the open and to make a loud political statements about why they were doing these things. It's concerning that this is potentially a new normal in which more of these might happen, or more people might be convinced that this is the appropriate course of action. I think the one thing that I have found somewhat encouraging is the number of Palestinian friends that I have who immediately rejected any association with either the shooting in Washington, D.C. or the Boulder attack. I mean, they didn't even let 24 hours go by, and they immediately were out there on social media or things saying, this is not us.
Hmm.
This is terrorism. We do not support this. This cannot
Right.
happen. And even people at the event, there was someone who was at the event and was a supporter of the Palestinian cause, was wearing a shirt saying this, and she even said, I didn't know how to react because I didn't want to be associated. Like, I wanted to help the people who were burning, but I was wearing my Palestinian shirt and I heard the things that he was shouting, and I didn't want people to think that I was with him. So
Well,
there is this maybe small glimmer of hope, I guess, in this instance, that there are still people who know the difference between terrorism and protesting, and who can have opinions, strong opinions, without resorting to violence in order to make themselves heard. And that gives me some hope. But the flip side is that, if there are more people who do think violence is the answer, that's very concerning.
right. Well, I once again want to highlight to our friends. I'll invite you to pray. This is a moment of prayer. We said in the last episode, and we say this again. This is the Intifada. The Intifada is home, is here. Intifada means a popular uprising of random terrorist attacks. This is another one. And first, so we could pray for a few things. We as Christians, we have faith that the Lord will hold back evil, that the Lord will change people's evil hearts. Also, that the Lord will give authorities the clarity and the ability to stop terror attacks and to be able to prevent this. There's a great episode that Dan Senior, his podcast "Call Me Back" did with a group of Jewish people in New York who work to prevent terror attacks. They work with law enforcement, and they have also actually a lot of success stories of they being able to identify trends and being able to expose people who were on their way to do terror attacks. So we need to pray that the Lord will give this kind of people clarity, law enforcement to stop these attacks. We pray for the victims again, for their families, that they're mourning, that they're dealing with the injuries, and then we need to act. We need to not be afraid to continue to stand. Zionism, we cannot allow them to make this a dirty word. Zionism means that we believe what the Bible says, that God gave this land to the Jewish people and they have a right to be there. That's a whole other podcast, but at the very least, the Jewish people have a right to live in their homeland, and that's what we stand for. So we'll be praying for that. Josiah, any last thoughts from your part?
No, appreciate you jumping on, Sebastian, so we can talk about this
Thank
really
you.
important subject.
No, thank you. And we'll be coming this week with a regular schedule episode later in this week. So look out for that. Thank you once again to our production team and to our All for Passage family. Please be in prayer, and we'll see you later this week. Thank you so